Charles' daughter first reported targeting a superficial femoral artery lesion with an endovascular approach. But 50 years later, there is still little consensus on the best treatment algorithm for these patients. Now, 2 drug-coated balloons have been approved in the United States based on 12-month safety and efficacy data. 2-year data were presented at TCT and now at AHA and at Viva, actually. We have some other additional data to talk about. And I am with Dr. Mark Turco, who is the medical director of aortic and peripheral vascular at Medtronic. And In.PACT Admiral's 2-year data was just presented at TCT. It's online. It's in the December 1st issue of JACC. Before we talk about the new data, can we look back and just remind ourselves what happened a few weeks ago and now is published in JACC?
Absolutely, Rick. So it's very exciting, actually, for the field because what Dr. John Laird presented was the 2-year In.PACT data, which showed that the In.PACT Admiral balloon had a very durable result versus standard balloon PTA out to 24 months. And it showed a very low target lesion revascularization rate and a patency rate at 24 months of 78%. And the beauty of that 78% is that it maintained a 28% differential from the drug-coated balloon, the In.PACT Admiral drug-coated balloon versus standard balloon angioplasty. And why this is very interesting and important is physicians have been wanting to see whether drug-coated balloons would have durability. And so now we have the 24-month data with the In.PACT Admiral drug-coated balloon that in fact does confirm that we have a nice durable result with this drug-coated balloon.
So just a week before we were here at AHA, this data was presented at Viva, and it's, first off, there's economic data being reported. What was that?
So, as we look at the In.PACT global registry data, and as we look at the entire In.PACT Admiral program that has been put forth, we start with a randomized population of patients, which is relatively controlled, and then we move to a more complex patient population. We've already spoken to the durability of the studies out to longer-term results, and then you obviously want the economic data. So if we concentrate here at what's been presented at Viva just a few weeks ago, and then what is being talked about here at the American Heart Meeting, is the economic analysis and what we see from In.PACT Admiral in the In.PACT Global Registry in a complex lesion subset. So when we look at complex lesions, we look at chronic total occlusions,
right.
We look at long lesions, and we look at patients with in-stent restenosis. And this is all in patients with superficial femoral artery disease. And so the in-stent restenosis data that was presented by Professor Marion Brodmann from Austria at Viva was quite interesting. She looked at 131 patients from the In.PACT Global Registry. And what that data showed was that there was a very high patency at 88% at 360 days in the in-stent restenosis patient population, which is a very, very complex patient population. The mean lesion length there was 17 centimeters of stented length. So very exciting to see that the In.PACT Admiral drug-coated balloon not only works in a well-controlled population, but then out in a much more complex patient population. And that follows the data that was previously presented by Dr. Scheinert, with long lesions, and then we will see at some point in the future here the imaging cohort from the chronic total occlusion patient population.
What I thought was interesting is it was not just cost-effective, but it was, quote, economically dominant strategy. I mean, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, that's...
The numbers weren't close.
No, and it's really very, very interesting data that actually Dr. David Cohen presented from Mid-America Heart and his group there. And he independently did an analysis of 181 patients from the In.PACT SFA program. And this was a prospective look at this patient population. And basically, as you say, it was clinically, it was almost economically dominant with a high probability of economic dominance. And when you look to other therapies such as transcatheter aortic valves, ICDs, those are very well-established therapies. Now we can say that the In.PACT Admiral drug-coated balloon is probably economically dominant, and that's very important because now we're showing clinical effectiveness at lower cost which is very important for the treatment of peripheral arterial disease and also, obviously, as you know, our health economic system.
Well, we have 2-year data now. We have more insight at in-stent restenosis patients. We have economic data available. So what is the role for drug-eluted balloons today?
Well, I think now that we see the data from the In.PACT Admiral program, the very low target lesion revascularization rates across the board, now that we see the cost effectiveness and economic dominance likely of these therapies, really the In.PACT Admiral drug-coated balloon, in my mind, and in many folks' minds, should be the default therapy and the primary therapy for symptomatic SFA disease.
And you can read the paper that was presented at TCT and published online. It's going into the December 1st issue of JACC. And for CardioSource World News Interventions, I'm Executive Editor Rick McGuire.